Okay, so have you ever found yourself talking endlessly about a big goal? Really getting into it, but then you realize you've actually done way more talking than doing. Or maybe you've wondered about this whole passion thing everyone bangs on about. Could it actually be like a subtle trap? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into something powerful and, yeah, often destructive: ego. We're drawing from some really compelling sources, including some great insights from Ryan Holiday. We'll explore how ego kind of subtly sabotages our potential, and crucially, how some of history's most accomplished figures actually learned to tame it.
Right. Our mission today is really to unpack what ego is,
Mm.
identify how it shows up, often sneakily in our lives, and then pull out some practical strategies. We want to help you cultivate that humility, that discipline, and realism that you need for, well, true sustainable success. We'll look at why sometimes the approaches that seem counterintuitive, they often lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
Yeah, and this isn't just about dodging failure, right? It's really about unlocking genuine growth, lasting impact. Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this.
So, to start, Adam Grant puts it nicely. He suggests ego really becomes an enemy when we're uh, unarmed with the cautionary insights of history, scripture, and philosophy. Basically, if we ignore those lessons, ego can just run rampant. He genuinely believes, quote, every reader will find truths that are pertinent to each of our lives, which is a big claim, but I think he's onto something. And to put it maybe more bluntly, Harold Gene, the pioneering CEO, he compared egoism to alcoholism.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. He said the egotist doesn't just stumble, they become more and more arrogant, and people mistake that arrogance for actual power or, self-confidence. And there was this early member of Alcoholics Anonymous who defined ego perfectly as a conscious separation from, well, for everything, that separation. That's the core problem. It builds walls.
Right.
It stops us working well with others, hearing feedback, even feedback we need, and seeing our own abilities clearly.
And it's just fascinating how modern culture seems to pour fuel on that fire, isn't it? Social media.
Yeah,
It's never been easier to just puff ourselves up,
exactly.
announce the big goals, chase that constant validation, basically live out the win online before you've done a single thing. It gives this false sense of accomplishment, this feeling of importance that, like you said, used to be just for rock stars or, I don't know, cult leaders.
Precisely. And without an accurate picture of what we can actually do,
Mm.
what we have isn't confidence, it's delusion.
Yeah.
So if ego creates a separation from reality,
Hmm.
how can we possibly lead effectively
Hmm.
or motivate anyone
Yeah.
or even just relate to people properly? It really makes you question how we see ourselves versus, how we truly are.
And that delusion often comes out as just talk, talk, talk.
Right.
Remember Upton Sinclair's run for governor in California back in '34? It was kind of disastrous.
Oh, yeah.
Before he even won, he published this best-selling book, I, Governor of California, and How I Ended Poverty. I mean, he basically lived out the victory entirely in his head in the book.
Right. He already was governor in his mind. Oh.
Exactly. And people noticed he sort of lost interest in the actual campaigning part. And guess what? He lost by 250,000 votes. The talk just got so far ahead the action, he lost the will to actually do it.
And it's not just politicians, is it? There's the writer Emily Gould. She got a big book deal, 6 figures, but then found herself stuck on the novel for years.
Hmm.
She admitted she was, quote, spending a lot of time on the internet and building her brand instead of, writing. She tried to justify the blogging and stuff as creative acts, but the novel just wasn't getting written. It reminds me of Kierkegaard, who warned that mere gossip anticipates real talk, and to express what is still in thought weakens action by forestalling it.
Mm.
Basically, talking about doing the thing can actually drain the energy you need to do the thing. Our brain's kind of confused saying it with actually achieving it.
Okay, so the thread here is this disconnect between what we say we'll do, our intent, and the actual, effort. So for someone listening right now, what's maybe a quick mental check they could do to make sure they aren't falling into that same trap?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think when you find yourself talking about a goal, just pause. Ask yourself, is this conversation helping me plan and actually do something? Or is it just feeling good to talk about it?
Oh.
If the buzz comes purely from the announcement, that's probably a red flag. The trick is to shift from describing the amazing destination to just detailing the very next, maybe boring step you're going to take.
That's powerful. Yeah, a practical distinction. Okay, now speaking of things that kind of go against the usual advice, let's talk about this idea. Don't be passionate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that sounds almost wrong, doesn't it? In a world constantly telling us, follow your passion. But then you think about someone like Eleanor Roosevelt, a hugely powerful activist, but she was defined by purpose, right? Not just passion and interest. reason, duty. Those are her drivers, not just intense emotion.
And the contrast there is what's really fascinating. Passion.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds amazing, but sometimes it just masks weakness. Think about John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach.
Yeah, UCLA.
Exactly. He was famously dispassionate. He saw extra emotions mostly as a burden, something that got in the way. His focus was on control, on just doing the job consistently, without all the drama.
Right.
Think of it like this. Passion, when it's unchecked, can become just breathlessness and impetuousness. It substitutes that feeling for actual discipline, for perseverance. It can trick you into thinking your strong belief is enough without the hard graft of preparation and, frankly, realism.
Okay, so let's say we manage to avoid just talking the talk and we navigate that tricky passion versus purpose thing. What happens when we actually do achieve something? That's often when another big ego trap pops up, right? Pride.
Oh, absolutely. Pride is insidious because it blunts the very tool we need most, our mind.
Mhm.
Our ability to learn, to adapt, to stay flexible, build relationships, all of that gets dulled by pride.
Mm.
Remember Benjamin Franklin? His youthful boastfulness. After he ran away from Boston, he came back at 18, just full of himself.
Yeah.
And the story goes, this wise elder, Cotton Mather, warned him, stoop, snoop, as Franklin, totally caught up in his own performance, smacked his head on a low beam.
Ouch. Metaphorically and literally.
Exactly. And Theognic put it even more chillingly. He wrote, the first thing which gods bestow on one they would annihilate is pride. It's a constant internal battle. Even John D. Rockefeller, with all his early success, apparently talked to himself every night.
Really?
Yeah, asking himself things like, are you going to be a fool? Or are you going to let this money puff you up? He actively worked to keep his pride in check.
So what's the takeaway here for us? It sounds like we really need to question these urges, these defaults, the urge to speak before acting, to flaunt passion instead of preparing, to swell up with pride over maybe things we haven't even fully done yet.
Right.
Recognizing them as potential distractions from the actual work, from real growth. It's about spotting these subtle ego traps before they completely snare us. Okay, so if those are the traps, how do we fight back? How do we counter them? A core principle seems to be keeping that student mindset, always learning.
Yes.
The story about Metallica replacing Dave Mustaine with Kirk Hammett kind of highlights this, doesn't it? Hammett was decent, young, thrown into this huge new situation, but he didn't swagger in with a massive ego. He came in ready to learn, and that teachability was everything.
The teachability is absolutely crucial. Look at Frank Shamrock, the MMA pioneer. He trains fighters using what he calls a plus-minus equal system.
Okay, what's that?
It means always having someone better than you to learn from, plus someone less experienced to teach, minus. Because teaching solidifies your own understanding and someone at your level to challenge you, equal. It ensures constant real feedback.
That makes sense. Keeps you grounded.
Exactly. Shamrock said, false ideas about yourself destroy you. For me, I always stay a student. That's what martial arts are about, and you have to use that humility as a tool. Which really raises a key question for all of us. How can we deliberately put ourselves in situations where we are the least knowledgeable person in the room to really challenge our assumptions?
That is a challenge because it sounds uncomfortable, right? So for someone listening, what's a practical, maybe everyday way they could start doing that without, feeling totally overwhelmed?
It definitely is uncomfortable, and that's kind of the point. But it doesn't have to be huge. It could be as simple as seeking out people with genuinely different viewpoints, maybe political, maybe cultural, and just listening. Actively listening to understand, not just waiting for your turn to argue back, or just picking up a book on a subject you know almost nothing about. It's about stretching that comfort zone. Interestingly, Genghis Khan, of all people, kind of embodied this.
Really? Genghis Khan?
Yeah. His incredible victories weren't because he was some born military genius. They came from what Ryan Holiday calls a persistent cycle of pragmatic learning, experimental adaptation, and constant revision. He basically stole and absorbed the best ideas, the best tech, the best practices from every culture he encountered. He was arguably more open to learning than any other conqueror in history.
Wow, that's not the usual picture you get of him. That openness links to another idea, doesn't it? The canvas strategy.
It does. It's this old Roman concept, the anti-amblo, which literally means one who clears the path for others.
Right.
And it's not about being a pushover or a doormat. It's about actively providing the support so that others can be good. It's about finding canvases for other people to paint on, essentially making way for their success.
And the payoff isn't immediate, right? It's long-term.
Exactly. The long-term benefits are huge.
Yeah.
Imagine if, for every person you met, you just thought, okay, how can I help this person in some small way? You'd learn a ton just by tackling diverse problems. You'd build this reputation for being indispensable. You'd create countless new relationships, new connections. This strategy basically trades that short-term hit of credit, that instant gratification, for real, lasting influence and deep personal development. Because ultimately, the person who clears the path, they often end up controlling its direction, but only after they've helped others succeed first.
That's a powerful reframe. And another antidote to ego seems to be just strategic restraint. Holding back. Jackie Robinson is such a powerful example here.
Incredible example.
He was apparently quite impulsive naturally, but when he broke baseball's color barrier, the abuse he took, especially those racist taunts from the Phillies manager Ben Chapman, it was brutal.
Unimaginable.
But he endured it without retaliating. He knew his mission, his purpose, was way bigger than his personal feelings or his immediate anger. It required immense self-control.
And compare that incredible restraint with someone like General George McClellan during the Civil War. He was apparently loved by his men, had this great image.
Yeah, I remember reading about him. Bit of a prima donna.
Sort of.
Yeah.
He was ultimately paralyzed by his own self-image, his delusions. He was constantly seeing enemy threats that weren't really there, getting tangled up in imagined political plots. It led to months and months of inaction. Failure, really. McClellan just couldn't get out of his own head. He preferred his own comforting stories about himself and the situation to the actual harsh reality. And that ego, that refusal to see clearly, led straight to his downfall. It's a stark contrast to Robinson's clarity of purpose.
So yeah, the path to mastery isn't about these grand ego-fueled gestures. It's more about the quiet stuff. Consistent effort, serving others, keeping yourself in check. But this whole ego problem, it doesn't just vanish once you achieve some success, does it?
Oh, definitely not.
In fact, leadership seems to bring its own, maybe even tougher set of ego challenges.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
That's when maintaining what the book calls sobriety, meaning a clear, rational mind, becomes even more critical and maybe even harder.
Right.
Think about Angela Merkel.
Yeah.
Apparently, as a child learning to dive, she'd stand on the board using every last second to make sure she made the right decision before jumping.
Huh. Interesting.
And later, as chancellor, she often reminded other leaders that fear is a bad advisor. It's about keeping that clear head. There's also this Zen philosopher, Zwingli, who had this daily practice. He'd call out to himself, "Master," then answer, "Yes, sir," then command himself become sober and answer again, "Yes, sir."
Wow, like a daily reset.
Exactly. It highlights that constant daily battle against self-deception, against delusion, especially when success starts telling you how great you are, and power itself. It's tricky. The historian Shelby Foote had this great observation. He said, power doesn't so much corrupt. It fragments, closes options, mesmerizes.
Mesmerizes. That's interesting.
Yeah, it clouds your mind right when you need clarity the most. It makes leaders really vulnerable to those ego-driven mistakes.
And it's not just about managing the people around you. It's fundamentally about managing yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at Eisenhower. President, most powerful man in the world, but he ran a famously tight ship. He was brilliant at delegating, keeping focused on the big picture. He understood, crucially, that urgent and important were not synonyms. His job was setting priorities and trusting his team, not getting lost in the weeds or his own importance.
And then you have the cautionary tale, John DeLorean.
The car guy.
The car guy. A mechanical genius, apparently a master of PR too.
Yeah.
He launched his own car company because he felt the discipline at GM had stifled creatives like him.
Okay.
But his own ego-driven mismanagement, his total lack of discipline, his habit of constantly chasing colored balloons, jumping from one shiny new idea to the next without follow-through, it led to spectacular failure, complete chaos, and eventually even criminality. He couldn't manage himself, plain and simple, and that meant he couldn't really manage anyone else either.
That pattern is just so common, isn't it? Pat Riley, the great basketball coach, he even coined a term for it, the disease of me. He saw it again and again. A team has that initial innocent climb, they achieve success, and then boom, individual egos start to swell. Players start calculating their own importance, and the team starts to fray. You saw it with Shaq and Kobe, apparently even Michael Jordan punching teammates in practice.
But General George Marshall provides such a powerful counterexample to that disease of me.
How so?
Well, he famously avoided any kind of lobbying for promotions for himself. And during World War II, he actually deferred command of the D-Day invasion to Eisenhower. even though Marshall was senior. He decided Ike was the better strategic choice for that specific operation.
Wow, that takes some serious self-awareness.
It really does. People who knew him, like President Truman, said that never did General Marshall think about himself. His ability to just suppress his personal pride, his own ambition for the sake of the bigger mission, it was truly magnanimous, really rare. It showed this profound self-management, prioritizing the objective over any personal glory.
So, ultimately, all these stories, all these insights, they seem to reinforce that bedrock of any real achievement. Just plain work, work, work.
Yes, it always comes back to the work.
The poet Stephen Mallarmé supposedly told the painter Edgar Degas was complaining he couldn't write poetry, even though he was full of ideas. Mallarmé told him, "It's not with ideas, my dear Degas. That one makes verse. It's with words."
Great line.
Or like Henry Ford put it, much more bluntly, you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. It's always about the doing, isn't it? Not the talking about doing.
Which brings us neatly to something Ira Glass talked about, the taste-talent gap.
Oh, I love this concept.
It's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Especially for creative people. Your early work, your first attempts, they often fall way short of your own discerning taste. You know it's good, but you can't quite do it yet.
Yeah, that gap can be painful.
Exactly. And that's precisely where ego tempts you. It tempts you to just bluster your way through, to pretend you're better than you are, instead of humbly putting in the hours, the continuous effort needed to actually improve and close that gap. Glass argues the answer isn't sudden brilliance, it's continual effort. It's the lonely hours, not just the bright ideas.
And alongside that consistent work, resilience is just so vital, especially when things get tough publicly. Katharine Graham is an amazing example here.
Absolutely, taking over the Washington Post after her husband's death,
Incredibly difficult circumstances.
and then facing the immense pressure during the Pentagon Papers. And then Watergate. Her own lawyers, her own board, were advising her not to publish those stolen documents. Huge risk.
Huge.
But she did it. She showed this incredible fortitude, this commitment to truth that outweighed the personal risk, the company risk. And later, when the market undervalued the Post's shares, she actually bought them back, betting on herself and the paper's real worth when others doubted.
That takes guts.
It really does. And what's fascinating, too, is how many great figures managed to turn what looked like dead time periods of failure or confinement into real opportunity.
Right, like setbacks becoming setups.
Exactly. Malcolm X, while he was in prison, educated himself relentlessly. He called books his alma mater. He even said later he felt he'd never been so truly free as when he was in his prison cell learning.
Wow.
And you see similar stories with Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps, Ian Fleming writing Bond while recovering from illness, Walt Disney starting over after bankruptcy. They all use those tough times to develop profound insights or create amazing work. It's like Booker T. Washington said, cast down your bucket where you are, make use of what you have right now instead of letting ego whine about how unfair things are.
And sometimes just the effort itself, just doing the right thing, has to be enough, regardless of whether you get the credit or the win. Belisarius, this incredible Roman general.
Yeah, hardly anyone knows him now.
Right. He basically saved Western civilization multiple times. But he constantly faced suspicion from the emperor, had his victories undone by politics, yet for him, apparently, doing the right thing was enough. His own ethics, his sense of duty, that was the real reward, not the external accolades.
Which raises that crucial question about external validation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much weight do we give it? Think about John Kennedy Toole and a Confederacy of Dunces.
Oh, heartbreaking story.
Isn't it? Rejected repeatedly by publishers, drove him to suicide. And then, posthumously, it wins the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
The book hadn't changed. Its quality was the same. Only the external reception changed.
Right.
So detaching ourselves even a little from needing that external praise, that external win, that's where true resilience comes from, finding the reward in the work itself, like Belisarius did.
So in this long game, it seems like drawing the line, knowing when to stop digging, and practicing self-correction is absolutely critical. We saw John DeLorean, even after his company collapsed, he just kept digging his own hole, ended up in criminality.
Yeah, no self-correction there.
But then you have someone like Steve Jobs, fired from Apple, largely due to his unmanageable ego back then. But he went away, learned from his mistakes at NXT, at Pixar, and came back to Apple a much more mature, more effective leader. He corrected course.
He did. It's like Adam Smith's idea of the impartial spectator. Can you judge your own actions against some kind of internal objective standard? Not just based on what you think you can get away with.
Like an inner referee.
Kind of. Or think of Frederick Douglass. When he was told to move to a baggage car because he was black, he refused, famously stating, "They cannot degrade Frederick Douglass. The soul that is within me no man can degrade." His worth wasn't dependent on their racist treatment.
Wow, powerful.
Ultimately, it always comes down to a choice, doesn't it? Martin Luther King Jr. preached that hate at any point is a cancer, but that love was transformational. Or think about Orson Welles. William Randolph Hearst ran this vicious campaign to destroy Citizen Kane, tried to ruin Welles, but Welles apparently invited Hearst to the premiere. He refused to let the bitterness consume him. He went on to live a long, fulfilling, creative life.
Unlike Dave Mustaine.
Right, who despite huge success with Megadeth apparently spent nearly 2 decades just eaten up with rage about being kicked out of Metallica.
Yeah.
That choice is always there. Let the resentment consume you. Or, like Wells, live your life, be happy, and soldier on with your purpose.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've really explored how ego can show up in ways that seem almost harmless at first, like just talking a good game or being overly passionate. But we've seen how it can derail even the most talented people. But, crucially, we've also seen the incredible power on the other side. The power of humility, of always being a student, of selfless service, and sticking firmly to purpose and reality.
Exactly. True. Lasting accomplishment. It's not built on some inflated sense of self-importance. It's built on the quiet, consistent work, being a student, serving others, keeping your head when success comes, and building a character that can withstand both the praise and the criticism.
And as Ryan Holiday reminds us, we are just like them and always will be. These struggles with ego, they're timeless, they're human. So maybe the question for everyone listening is, what's one small act of humility or silence when you want to boast, or maybe selfless work you can commit to today? Just one small thing to keep your own ego in check and actually build something that lasts.
And building on that, how might cultivating that impartial spectator within yourself, that inner moral compass, that objective judge of your own actions, how might that change the way you approach your next challenge or your next decision? How can it help ensure your journey is really one of growth and genuine impact, not just noise?